This is an advertisement by BetterHelp. January arrives with a sense of expectation and change. But real change is rarely loud or dramatic.
It's noticing what no longer needs to be there. Thoughts you keep turning over even when they're not helping.
And when you live with those long enough, they can start to feel normal until you pause and see them more clearly. That's where perspective helps. Not fixing yourself, just creating space to understand what's been weighing you down.
Therapy can offer that space, a clearer view of your own patterns and what's worth holding on to. BetterHelp makes starting straightforward. You answer a few questions and they match you with a qualified therapist. If it doesn't feel right, you can switch at any time.
Whether you're into New Year's resolutions or not, working to better yourself is something everyone should do. And you don't even need to bulldoze your life to do it. Simply use BetterHelp.
BetterHelp makes it easy to get matched online with a qualified therapist. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/restishistory. That's betterhelp.com/restishistory.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Car shopping shouldn't feel like preparing for a marathon of paperwork. That's why Carvana makes buying and financing your car easy. From start to finish, search thousands of vehicles with great prices. All online, all on your time. And when you're ready, your new car shows up right at your door. It doesn't get better than that. Buy your car the easy way. On Carvana. Delivery fees may apply.
Sport, sport, sport. It's all that we've been talking about. It's all that the national media has been talking about in the aftermath of the astonishing Kings and Queens of England World Cup. And Dominic, we've had several.
I'm sure you said World Cup.
Do you know? I'm so excited and I'm so shattered from the drama of it all that I can barely remember how to.
You're like a trembling wreck. The adrenaline has coursed through your.
I am a trembling wreck. World Cup. Have you kind of come to terms with the drama of it all? Have you processed it?
Well, so for those people who don't know
what the hell we're talking about,
yeah, we ran a World Cup of Kings and Queens of England on Twitter, and 84,000 people voted, or rather, there were 84,000 votes. I think is probably slightly more accurate to say. And in the end,
because some of us could have been voting under multiple identities. Of course. Not that we were.
But at the end, Athelstan prevailed over Elizabeth I in the final by the
barest of margins.
So 50.5% to 49.5%. And the lead changed hands several times. The game was extended overnight so people in America could vote. And Athelstan, who was unseeded, prevailed. It was very exciting. And it's a fun way to get into the subject of talking about the Kings and Queens of England, which is something that I grew up, so many people who got into history, they're sort of the structure, the scaffolding, if you like, were the stories of the Kings and Queens, weren't they? They're still the way in which actually we structure English history, the reign of so-and-so, the Elizabethan age,
Tudors,
the Georgians,
Stuarts, whatever. Yeah.
So we thought it was a fun way to sort of get into this subject. And what we're going to do, so we have done a podcast already on the winner, on the unexpected winner, who was Athelstan. And Tom, what we thought we'd do today was to talk about the people who got knocked out in the first round, didn't we?
Yes, because I think the value of this from the point of view of of history, rather
the academic value of this,
the academic value of this, as opposed to the massive sports excitement, which we in no way want to underplay, is that it enables us to look at the kind of the institution of the monarchy and how it's evolved and changed, and what I think also what people's reactions, how they vote, and so on, what that says about our attitude to history, to monarchy, and so on. Yeah. But it does also enable us to provide various kind of short portraits of significant figures in English history, and I think that's what we should focus on today. So tomorrow's episode we'll look a bit more at the kind of the institution, the historiography, that kind of stuff. But today we should. So we began with. Obviously, there'd been kind of knockout rounds, but 16 had made the actual World Cup.
That was controversial in and of itself.
Yeah, it was.
We had. So we didn't have Alfred the Great for reasons that we have discussed in great length in our preview podcast, because England did not exist when Alfred the Great was king, he was king of Wessex only. That was your ground for excluding him, but also because you were worried he wouldn't win. And you love Alfred the Great so much. And it's clear now that he probably would have won.
He probably would, yeah.
But we did include Oliver Cromwell, Lord Protector, because we said he was a bit like a king and he filled a king-shaped hole, and also because we knew it would get people talking, which it did. So we had some absolutely outraged listeners. A man called Capel Loft, formerly a friend of the show, I think. Now, perhaps
adversary of the show.
A bit more semi-detached. He mounted his own rifle World Cup.
Yes, he did, with lots of kind of Hanoverians. We didn't have any of the Georges. We left out William III.
We are going to do an episode later next year just about the Georges, aren't we?
Just for
to show that we do, to show that we listen to our listeners.
We're the People's Podcast, aren't we?
We are the People's Podcast. I will just say one thing, which is I note that his alternative World Cup was not featured in the Times, unlike some World Cups I can mention. But if he's feeling cross and he's about to cancel us again, I will repeat, we are going to do a podcast about the Hanoverians. Anyway, so basically, we're forgetting about Edward II, Richard II, Henry VI, Edward VIII, all these duds who are out of the tournament.
Although I did like the idea that somebody suggested that we should do one on the worst kings and queens of England.
The worst kings would be hilarious.
So that'd be fun, wouldn't it?
Yes,
so that's something perhaps to look forward to.
So we're going to crack on. So the kings that we're talking about today have done very well to get to this round, but they fell at the first major hurdle.
So we should just list the seeds. So it was Elizabeth I, Henry VIII, Henry V, William I, Victoria, Edward III, Charles II, Elizabeth II.
Yes.
That was the order. And then the others were Edward I, Henry II, Henry VII, Knut, Richard I, Cromwell, Athelstan, George V. And the opening rounds, the first match to be played was Elizabeth I, the top seed, against Edward I. And
she hammered him, didn't she?
Absolutely hammered him.
So the question here is,
which is appropriate because, of course, his nickname is Hammer of the Scots. So the hammer got hammered.
Was he going to lose no matter who he played in this round? And I think he probably was going to lose, wasn't he? Edward I?
He was. And I think one of the things, of course, that's interesting is that if you grow up in England, reading English books, going to English schools, is that you get an English perspective on your kings and queens.
Of course.
And doing competition like this brings home very, very forcibly that people elsewhere may not entirely have quite the perspective that you do. And of course, Edward I is famous as Hammer of the Scots. He's Long Shanks, so named because of his enormous size, the villain of Braveheart.
Yeah.
But he's also the English king that completed the English conquest of Wales. And so he's not regarded with huge enthusiasm in Wales either. So I think the Scots and the Welsh were never going to rally behind him.
But an undeniably impressive king, though, Tom. I mean, I know he crashed out, but by medieval standards. So he is in many ways the model of a medieval king, isn't he, Edward I? He comes in after his father, Henry III, who's been a bit of a sort of...
Bit useless.
A bit of a dithery sort of jelly, fighting Simon de Montfort and the barons rising up against him. And Edward I, am I right in thinking that he really reasserts royal authority and a sort of...
he's huge. He looks a king, kind of massive. He's been on a crusade. He's very good at fighting. And he's a very, very able administrator. And yes, absolutely, in a way, he's the kind of the model.
So you sent me some notes before we started. I'm not going to give away all our methods to the listeners, but when I look under Edward I on the notes that you sent me, I see the words genital mutilation. What's all that about?
Well, so one of the themes of medieval history, actually, no, I mean, it's a theme right the way through, is the awkward relationship that heirs to the throne tend to have with their predecessors.
Yeah.
And Edward initially causes trouble for his dad because his dad is facing a baron's rebellion led by a guy called Simon de Montfort.
Yeah.
And Edward initially sides with the rebellious barons, but he then changes sides, leads the royal forces, defeats Simon de Montfort at the Battle of Evesham, which is an incredibly bloody battle, probably the bloodiest battle since Hastings. And Simon de Montfort dies in this battle, and he gets he gets dismembered, mutilated, and his genitals get hacked off.
Oh, right. Well, that's a nice touch, isn't it?
So that's a kind of the measure of Edward.
Edward doesn't do that personally, presumably.
I think he probably orders it. The Lord Edward, as he's known. I mean, he's not a guy that you want to
you don't mess.
You want to get on the wrong side of. He then goes on. He goes on the crusade.
Yep.
he comes back. He gets involved, heading back to England. He gets involved in a massive tournament at Chalon, where various enemies try and gang up and murder him. But because he's tremendously cool and very good at fighting, he just wallops them.
Right.
And then he comes back to England, gets crowned, and it's chaos because loads of Scottish lords come, and in the party spirit, they let all their horses loose so that people can, you can pick up a horse and you can have it, and then all the English lords do it. So it's just London is full of horses galloping everywhere, and it's great fun.
Right. Okay. That's a very strange. That just seems very strange.
And he gets crowned with the crown of Edward the Confessor. So
because of the name,
his name,
right?
yes, his
just
name.
Just a quick question about his name. Why is he called Edward?
Henry III is a huge fan of Edward the Confessor, who is founded Westminster Abbey, and Henry III rebuilds Westminster Abbey. So the Westminster Abbey we have now is basically it's Henry III's creation.
Yeah.
But Edward the Confessor's tomb lies at the heart of it, and so he names Edward after this Anglo-Saxon king.
Isn't it a strange thing that Henry III, who is a bit of a drip, has this son who basically is, Heracles, whose own son is then back to the drip again?
Yeah, there's this kind of cycle there, isn't there?
There's a weird cycle, isn't there?
Yeah. So Edward is so one of the many things that Braveheart gets wrong, and I always remember John O'Farrell's witty comment on it that the only way it could be more inaccurate was if it featured a plasticine dog and was called William Wallace and Gromit. But one of the many ways he gets it wrong is that Edward is shown as sleeping around and exercising droit de seigneur, but in fact he was very, very luxurious.
Like Nero,
very fond
according to you.
Like Nero, yes. So he married Eleanor of Castile, and she died, and he's so distraught that when her coffin is brought back, he builds Eleanor crosses the whole way.
Yeah. Is that Charing Cross? Is Charing Cross one of those? Yes.
Yeah, that's a Victorian kind of rebuilding of it. I think there are 3 that basically survive. The original one at Charing Cross was destroyed by Cromwell.
So he obviously also conquers Wales.
Conquers Wales, yep. And there's more genital mutilation there because he basically introduces hanging, drawing, and quartering. And the brother of Llewellyn ap Gruffydd, who is the last the Welsh Prince of Wales. Yeah. He gets captured, hung, drawn, quartered, and the drawing involves genital mutilation.
Nice. Also, he does have a bit of a blot on his discussion, doesn't he, about expelling the Jews?
He expels the Jews. Yeah, he does that as well.
So that's to do with the sort of anti-Semitic climate that's grown up around the Crusades, is it? Do you think that he's sort of drunk deeply of that?
I think that helps. I think it's basically he wants to take their money.
Right,
because he's waging all these wars.
Yeah.
And so he's fighting the Welsh, he's fighting the Scots. So he needs the money. So basically he grabs the money and chucks the Jews out. And then of course he continues to need money. And so one of the reasons why Edward I's reign is so important is that actually we mentioned Simon de Montfort, who in a way is kind of traditionally cast as the father of parliaments. Edward I really is the father of parliaments because there's one key parliament, the model parliament, in which the commons as well as the lords come, and this essentially establishes the idea that parliaments should involve both commons and lords.
Right.
So very, very influential. But I mean, not a very pleasant man.
No, but
very, very powerful, very domineering,
powerful.
very effective, very influential, but not the kind of guy who's going to beat Elizabeth I.
No, but clearly despite, as you say, unpleasantness in various areas, a very, no doubt to his contemporaries, an incredibly impressive king, a very formidable figure.
I think the kind of the model what a king should be.
Yeah.
And he dies at Burr Marsh, which is on the Solway Firth, and anyone who's walked along Hadrian's Wall will remember the memorial to him, to the place where he died, that stands there.
Very nice. So a very formidable fellow. And the next king to bow out was also a very formidable medieval king. Arguably, I mean, some people would say, Twitter tournaments aside, one of the absolute 24 karat sort of
top kings,
top definitive kings, Henry II, who ruled from 1154 to 1189. So he's the great.
He lost to Elizabeth II, so all the seconds, but amazing. Yeah, well, I mean,
he is
amazing,
a Titanic. I mean, he's the founder basically of the Plantagenets, isn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, so his dad, Geoffrey of Anjou, had a sprig of broom, which in Latin Plantagenista.
So some of our listeners will have heard of the civil war between Stephen and Matilda. So Matilda,
Christ and his saints slept.
Exactly, the anarchy, isn't it? That's the anarchy, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the sort of deal that they do is that Stephen will be king, and Matilda's son Henry will succeed. So Henry is ruler of. He's got these vast possessions in France, the kind of Angevin Empire, but he's also got England, and he again is the absolute model, isn't he, Tom, of a formidable, reforming, powerful, centralizing medieval king.
Archbishop murdering.
Well, there is that. Yes, there is that. So I think
you know why I'm keen on him.
The sacral.
No, he wasn't very sacral. I mean, he murdered an archbishop.
Cricketing king?
Salisbury. So one of his favourite places was a hunting lodge that he built into a palace called Clarendon, which stood just outside Salisbury.
That's where he issues this famous the Constitutions of Clarendon, isn't it? One of the sort of...
Yes. So he's a bit like Edward. He's a great lawgiver, and he's the kind of the origins of the English legal system, the common law, and all that kind of thing is often attributed to him. And I'm not sufficiently qualified to say whether that's accurate or not. But one of the ways in which Henry is trying to impose his authority on England is by reining in the degree to which clerics are kind of immune from secular prosecution. And he issues these Constitutions of Clarendon in 1164, which attempt to place limits on the authority of the clergy and the Pope and so on. And this is where the bust up with Becket happens. Thomas Becket.
He's best known for the fact that I've played him on stage at the Edinburgh
Have you?
Festival.
Of course, yes, of course.
Teenage bishops and trainers did not exactly convey the majesty of the medieval church, said the Scotsman.
What does the Scotsman know? Edward I would have had no truck with the Scotsman.
No. He'd have given us a great review.
Okay, well, so quickly, just tell us about Henry II and Thomas.
Oh God! I should never.
On the basis of you having played him.
So, as I recall, I played him as a very, very. It's hard to sum it up in one podcast actually, because it was such a sophisticated, rich and nuanced portrayal. Yeah. So Becket is kind of his creature, isn't he? He's his pal. He's his great pal. Then he becomes a cleric, and then the version that I was
playing, kind of like Cardinal Wolsey,
exactly, by the French playwright Jean Anouilh. Becket then kind of basically is sort of semi-born again or something, as I remember, and then is converted to the cause of the church. He falls out with the king, and then the king famously sends these men, or doesn't send them, depending on what you believe.
Well, so what happens before that is that Becket reluctantly agrees to the Constitutions of Clarendon, then goes away, then decides that he's done the wrong thing with his conscience.
Yes.
Henry absolutely explodes. Becket ends up going into exile, where he cozies up to the French king, who is the great rival of Henry II in France. So that doesn't go down well. Becket comes back to Canterbury. It's all been negotiated. He kind of, what does he do? He kind of refuses to do something that Henry wants. And Henry explodes and says words to the effect of, "Who will rid me of this turbulent priest?" And 4 knights rush off and they cut him down. What is it? I think the 29th of December. And they kill him by slicing the top of his head off as though it were an egg.
Well, as regular listeners will know, this extraordinary portrayal on the stage in Edinburgh almost got me the role as Paddington.
Yes.
Because it was directed by the guy who went on to direct the Paddington films. And if only history had taken a better course.
I know.
Tom would be doing this podcast with Ben Whishaw, and I would be playing a bear, Peruvian bear.
I think for that alone, Henry II deserved to do better.
Yes.
Although possibly one reason why he didn't do better is that Henry II is the English king who first intervenes in Ireland.
Right. I don't think that cost.
So he leads in. I know, but a kind of rumbling backdrop to the World Cup has been Irish voters.
Yeah.
With
rumblings
justifiable complaints against certain figures in English history.
Basically,
Cromwell. Well, Cromwell obviously features. Elizabeth I too, of course. But Henry II. Actually, I didn't see anyone complain about Henry II. But 1171, he leads this invasion, and then he gives Ireland to John. I mean, it's kind of the worst thing.
That's the worst thing that's ever happened to Ireland, right? Being given to John to be
terrible. But Henry gets paid back for that because his sons turn against him. He's got Eleanor of Aquitaine, his wife,
Yeah, we should have mentioned her. Very impressive woman. Absolutely formidable.
She is impressive, but she's also a bit of a baggage, isn't she?
Are we allowed to say that? Are you allowed to say
I don't know. Well, she kind of, she's kind of goes off with her wussy French king husband and decides that he's too much of a drip, so jumps ship, shacks up with Henry II, then turns against him, encourages all his sons to rebel against her. She is impressive, but she's also, kind of a bit of a nightmare.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Henry II, I think no one studies him in schools.
So that's why
he's sort of an identikit, impressive medieval king, so people didn't vote for him. And
do you know what David Hume said about him?
I do, because I've got it written down on the notes.
Okay, do you want to read it out?
Yeah. The greatest prince of his time for wisdom, virtue, and abilities. But David Hume's been cancelled now, hasn't he? So, I mean, that doesn't count. David Hume was around.
No, I think that still counts.
So, that's the end of Henry II. We're going far too slowly, Tom, because Tom's actually got to go on the radio, a real radio programme, in half an hour. So we have to rattle through them.
Rachel Morley-esque.
So Henry VII was the next series. Now, I'm a huge admirer of Henry VII. I think he was a very impressive king.
Do you know who else?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so there are two. There are two key figures in English cultural life at the moment. One is Jonathan Wilson.
Yeah, and the other is George Osborne.
The other is George Osborne. Both of them. Henry VII
so they're
is their favourite king.
Great Henry VII admirers. Yes.
And the reason for that, obviously, is that Henry VII is famously careful with his money.
Careful with his money. Yeah, I'm not going to... I mean, Jonathan Wilson may take offence, but I think Jonathan Wilson is well known for being he's very canny. He's a canny operator.
Yeah, canny operator, yeah.
Yes, Henry VII is basically an adventurer, isn't he? He's sort of left over from the Wars of the Roses, through a very series of complicated kind of family tree shenanigans. He's the last basically surviving Lancastrian claimant. Do you think, is that fair? I mean, I know I'm massively simplifying.
Yeah,
Tom.
so the Yorkists take over in the form of Edward IV, then Edward V, his son, who then vanishes in the Tower, and Richard III takes over. So the Lancastrians have basically been wiped out. But you do have Henry, and he is the grandson of Owen Tudor, who married, weirdly, Catherine of France, who married Henry V.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's quite, that's quite a come down, isn't it?
He's really done well for
Catherine of France. Yeah, really done well. And both Owen and Owen's son, so Henry VII's, future Henry VII's father, Edmund, they're both killed by Yorkists. But the key figure for Henry, and basically the reason why he becomes the pretender, is that his mother, Margaret Beaufort, is descended from Edward III via John of Gaunt.
Yeah, and she had him when she was 13.
I know.
That's kind of scary, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, so she obviously built him up, doesn't she? She pushes him forward. She promotes him. She has all the contacts.
Yeah.
So he flees to France in 1471, and he's not really a significant player at all, is he?
I think he's significant enough that the Yorkist kings are trying to get rid of him. And so he's constantly kind of having to move. He moves from Burgundy to France.
But that's really because he's the last loose
Brittany
end. It's not because he has any reputation as a tremendous fellow. He's just the last remaining...
Until Richard III's usurpation.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is when it all starts to fall to pieces for the Yorkists.
Yeah.
Because people are genuinely shocked by what's happened. And so you have the Duke of Buckingham. He launches this initial revolt in association with Henry VII. But he launches it too soon. Buckingham gets murdered, gets caught, executed, and his ghost to this day haunts Debenhams in Salisbury.
I wondered why you were going down this Buckingham rabbit hole. So you could mention Debenhams in Salisbury.
He haunts the lingerie department, apparently.
Kelsey
Right. Father Ted.
So Henry VII invades. He leads this kind of ragtag band. They arrive at
1485.
The Stanners change sides. Richard III is killed. We're going to do a podcast about the Princes in the Tower next year. We have it in the diary, so we won't get into too much detail. Henry VII, crown found in Hawthorne Bush, put on head. He is king.
Marries Elizabeth of York.
Yes, he does, to unite Lancaster and York.
So the red and white rose are united in the Tudor rose.
And then after this dreadful period of basically 70 years, a long period of relative chaos, which had culminated in the Wars of the Roses, Henry VII really restores stability, and he cracks down on the barons.
It kind of rumbles on, though, doesn't it? It rumbles on.
It does. So they don't know the Wars of the Roses have ended in 1485.
But they haven't entirely ended, because you get Lambert Simnel, who pretends to be the Earl of Warwick, and who gets defeated at the Battle of Stoke.
Doesn't he end up being a pastry cook or something?
Yes, a spit. He turns the spits,
Right.
scullion in the kitchens. And then Perkin Warbeck, who claims to be the younger of the princes in the Tower, and he gets executed. So you've got them. But yes, basically, and he founds the yeomen of the guard.
Nice.
In the Tower.
But he's very good he sorts out the royal finances, which have been such a problem. He's disliked for his heavy taxes. So
Morton's fork.
Yes. So basically Morton's fork is, Morton is one of his ministers. If you appear to be rich, then you obviously have lots of money and you should give more tax to the king. If you appear to be poor, then you're obviously hiding all your money.
Yeah.
You should also give more tax to the king.
So you can see why George Osborne is such a fan.
But he's clever. He's
sinister, isn't he?
Well, but he's not rapacious and he's not tyrannical.
Oh, I think he's rapacious.
I don't think he's rapacious. I think he's
rapacious.
I think he's canny.
Have you read Tom Penn's wonderful book, Winter King?
The Winter King, exactly, yes.
Because that gives
very good.
Makes him a sinister figure, I think.
He makes him sinister, but I think he slightly overdoes the sinister aspect. I think for a lot of people, after the turmoil of the previous decades, Henry VII provided very welcome stability.
Okay, I accept that, but I also think that there is a kind of slightly sinister, mean quality to him that explains...
Well, clearly the voters agreed with you.
Why he lost to Henry V. He's a much more a glamour figure. Okay.
So we have to do one more before the break, Tom.
Oh, goodness. Okay, well, let's speed up. So William I against Canute. So interesting, clash of 11th century invaders and conquerors of England there. Both of Viking heritage. Canute won. It was a very, very tight battle. Canute only just lost.
Yeah, Canute only just lost, didn't he? So a lot of people, you call him Canute, but most of us know him as Canute, which is the ladybird.
Well, Canute prompts the inevitable joke.
Is that why you're doing it?
No, because he was Canute.
Okay,
Canute is a later Gallicism.
So he's Danish, isn't he? Son of Svein Forkbeard.
Svein Forkbeard, who is son of Harold Bluetooth, friend of the show.
Yeah.
The Viking king who got shot in the arse while having a dump.
Yeah.
Svein Forkbeard, terrifying king, had a beard, it was forked, came over to England, conquered England.
But dies before he can become king?
No, he does become king. He forces out Ethelred the Unready. He flees abroad. Svein Forkbeard is king of England for about 5 weeks, and he dies, according to later tradition, because Saint Edmund appeared. He's being rude about Saint Edmund. Saint Edmund very politely tells him to stop. Svein Forkbeard basically says "piss off," and so Edmund kills him.
He struck him on the head a blow from the pain of which he shortly afterwards died. It says here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So slapped on the head by a saint, by a.
So that's Svein dead. So Canute then takes over, and there's this. Canute is a kind of great hero of the Skaldic bards, and they hymn him when he's very young. He's very precocious kind of raider. Only a boy, you ship batterer. When you launched your boat, no king was younger than you. And Canute fights with Ethelred the Unready's son, Edmund Ironside. It's a score draw. They divide England up. Edmund then dies in 1016. Supposedly, again, a bit like Harold Bluetooth having a dump.
Oh, that's
He's supposedly spiked through a hole in the privy, a spear up into his arse. So that's him done. And Canute then takes over England. And to begin with, he's absolutely terrible. And he imposes this 100% tax rate.
So that's very...
He takes the entire tax revenue of England and makes off with it.
That's very Dennis Healy circa 1975.
Yeah, but he only went to 98%, didn't he?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. 83% I think was the top income tax rate.
Right.
98% was on unearned income.
But interestingly, so having been murderous and kind of just nicking everything, Canute then becomes a really good king. So there's a very good Archbishop of York called Wulfstan, as Archbishops of York tend to be. And he gets Canute to swear to uphold the laws of the Anglo-Saxon kings, to be a good king. Canute is actually a very devout Christian. He marries Ethelred's widow, Emma, the daughter of the Duke of Normandy. So there's a bit of continuity there.
Tom, please tell me about the waves. I mean, everyone wants to know about the waves.
I think we should focus on more important things, like he was a great patron of Wilton. about 3 miles from where I grew up. So that's very important.
Wiltshire chauvinism.
He went on pilgrimage to Rome in 27, got kind of lauded by the Pope, by the Emperor and everybody, buried in Winchester. So a good king by English standards.
Right. And
the thing, of course, for which he is known is the story that he stands on the beach and tries to stop the waves. And that's a story that originates in the 12th century with Henry of Huntingdon.
Yep.
And it's an illustration of the fact that not that Canute is kind of insanely arrogant and thinks that he can stop the waves. It's exactly the opposite. He's showing, because flatterers are saying to him, you're the great king, you can do anything you like. And Canute demonstrates by his failure to hold back the waves that only God can do everything.
Well, I think that's, even if he didn't do it, it's still laudable. And
yes, display of modesty that
never happened,
that we can all learn from.
And he absolutely should have beaten William the Conqueror, in my view. Just a far better man. Now we will have to take a break, and we will return to do while the waves lap around the legs of Tom Holland's throne. We will have some advertising and promote things, and then we shall return and talk about the 4 remaining losers from this round. And we shall see you after the break. Goodbye.
This episode is brought to you by the Financial Times. I think we both agree, Dominic, that in the clamour of countless voices competing to break the news and telling you the what, the who, and the where on these stories, there's often something missing, isn't there?
There is, Tom, because I think to get a true understanding of any story, you really need to know why. Take FT journalism. It goes deeper, providing the insight, analysis, and perspective to help you see the whole story and truly understand the issues that matter. Why did it happen? Why is it important? And why will it matter? I've got a brilliant example. So they had an article recently, a fascinating article about why populism became popular. And this Financial Times article absolutely delved into that. It was so interesting.
And does it nail it?
Yeah, it nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. And it really made me look at populism in a new light.
Well, if you're interested in the why, we have good news.
Yes, listeners to The Rest is History can save more than 40% on an annual digital subscription to the Financial Times by visiting ft.com/history. For the why, Financial Times.
This episode is brought to you by Rocket Money.
Tom, we often talk about how to organise our finances. I'm very conscious that I'm paying for a lot of mad subscriptions. And there's one thing that we've talked about often on this show. It's the thing that we probably hate more than any other, and it's a hidden fee. I would love to get my finances under control. There are all these things piling up on our bank statements, and I think I need to fix this problem. I need to sort this out and to stop this.
I mean, my finances are so chaotic that I need this app.
So I'll tell you what it is. It's called Rocket Money. It's a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions. It monitors your spending and it helps to lower your bills so that you can grow your savings.
With Rocket Money, you can track all of your subscriptions and you can easily cancel within the app with just a few taps, saving you time, avoiding charges. And you can also set budgets and goals and get personalized insights and regular reports to track how you're doing. They will even send you real-time alerts for large transactions, upcoming bills, refunds, and even low balances. So let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/ishistory.
That's rocketmoney.com/ishistory. rocketmoney.com/ishistory.
Now, regular listeners will be familiar with our splendid promotional efforts for Unheard.
And how do you spell that, Dominic?
I spell it UNHERD.com. They're very keen on the spellings. They've written that in blue for us to spell out. So it's the online magazine. You may remember it pushes back against herd mentality and is passionate about independent thinking. And it's been sponsoring our podcast very kindly. And both of us have written for Unheard, haven't we, Tom?
Yeah, absolutely. Which is why, very kindly, they're offering a special deal to all you listeners out there, Rest is History listeners, 3 months free subscription, which can be cancelled at any time. It's normally £1. I guess, is that a month, a week? A week, I guess.
It's £1 a week, the producer is telling me. It's £1 a week.
We're so on top of our brief here. But what I can tell you is that if you want to claim it, you go to unheard.com/rest. And each week, We will pull out some highlights from Unheard that Rest is History listeners might enjoy.
Yes.
And this week, of course, Dominic, we've been talking kings and queens. We are talking kings and queens. We're in the middle of the episode.
We're doing it right now.
And there's a fabulous article written by Henry Oliver about...
Named after two kings, of course. One uncrowned.
Very, very good. And that is about King Charles III.
Do you think he will be King Charles III?
Well, he's talking about changing his name, isn't he?
Yeah, I think, maybe to Athelstan II now.
That would be good, wouldn't it? That would be great.
Very good. Very satisfying.
But it's a kind of comparison about how he might operate and actually how he might be quite like George V.
Well, as you will discover in this podcast, that is a tremendous thing to be.
Wears his trousers correctly.
Yes.
Keen
the
on
right
stamps.
shoes, stamps.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So essentially, Charles III may be okay as king. Is the
well, that
argument
sounds
of this.
great. I'm looking forward to it already.
Yeah. And then also, I think even more, an even better article. I mean, it's an absolutely wonderful article. You couldn't really read anything better. It's by the wonderful Kostika Bradatan, who's written an essay, Privileges and New Original Sin. And do you know what he argues, Dominic?
It sounds a terrible argument. I mean, I know
he argues, and I'm reading here, that today's progressives are as steeped in Christian ideas as both their capitalist and communist forebears.
Wow. And who does he reference? What top authorities does he reference in this article?
I believe that he references a top historian who has written a history of Christianity and always goes on about it in podcast.
Yes. Tom, no less a person than Tom Holland, friend of the Rest is History.
So that is why I have absolutely no hesitation in unreservedly recommending Unheard, UNHERD.
Do spell it out. Yeah. Unheard.com/rest. Go and join the Unheard. Well, they'll have a herd if too many people join. They don't want that. But let's hope that a substantial minority sign up to Unheard so that we can carry on promoting.
A countercultural minority. Yeah. Okay, back to the kings and queens. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Welcome back to The Rest is History. We are talking about the losers in the first round of the World Cup of Kings and Queens, and we are on to the Lionheart himself, Richard I. Tom, were you surprised to see Richard the Lionheart bowing out so soon?
Not really, because, we talked about doing the worst Kings and Queens of England. I think Richard would be a candidate for that as well. He's probably the only one who'd feature prominently in both. He's
sort of wrong but romantic, isn't he? He's a
very glamorous figure.
Yeah.
But he's also, everyone knows he's terrible. So Stephen Runciman, the great historian of the Crusades, said that he was a bad son, a bad husband, a bad king, but a gallant and splendid soldier.
So he's king for 10 years, and of those 10 years, he spends 10 months in England. And the rest of it is basically crusades, isn't it? And being captured and locked up in Austria or whatever it is.
He marries Berengaria of Navarre, who is famously, reputedly, the only Queen of England never to have set foot in England. And she features in, I think, is it Lion in Winter? And she has the immortal line, War. What is it, Dominic? It's your favourite one.
War, war, war. That's all you care about, Dick Plantagenet.
That's right, exactly. And that's pretty much, that's pretty accurate. Basically, fighting is all he does. So he's born in England, but he spends very little time in England. He's basically in Aquitaine with his mum.
Yeah.
And he just fights. So
he's
he fights against
the Crusades, isn't he?
He fights against his dad.
Yeah.
So he's poor Henry II. Henry II basically dies of despair and grief because Richard is such a nightmare. And then no sooner as he become king, then he's basically trying to flog London and raise vast amounts of money so he can fund a crusade. So he goes off on the Third Crusade, and he's a tremendous success on that. He doesn't capture Jerusalem, but he
captures
creates
Acre, though, doesn't he?
He captures Acre. He becomes admired by Saladin, defeats Saladin. Great star. He's very brutal. He slaughters lots of prisoners, but he blazes a path. He cuts a dash.
But all the other European monarchs hate him, don't they? Don't they? The fella from Austria, Leopold, and Philip of France.
Well, yes, because they capture Acre. They capture Acre, and he's there with Philip II of France, Philip Augustus, and Leopold of Austria, and the three of them put up their banners. And Philip and Richard are furious because Leopold of Austria isn't a king. So they hurl it down. Richard hurls it down into the mud. And then when he comes back from the crusade, of course, he gets captured.
Yeah.
And Leopold takes him prisoner. And so all Richard's subjects in France and England have to raise another massive amount of money to get him out.
Yeah, it's poor behaviour. I mean, I can't imagine the current Queen behaving that way.
No, but this is, and it's all, and Philip II, who's his compadre on the crusade, but is this great rival because Philip wants to take back the Angevin Empire, and he's been working in cahoots with John, who everyone will remember from Walt Disney as the evil, cowardly lion. Philip, when Richard the Lionheart finally gets released, sends this message: "Look to yourself, the devil is loose."
But what do people in England think of?
I think they think he's kind of dashing, but a bit of a pain. But I think the long run, the evidence for what people in England think about him is all those stories that the Robin Hood stories, where it's Richard the Lionheart turns up and he's the absolute hero and he saves the day. So Sean Connery in
yes, exactly.
Robin Hood,
Sean Connery bizarrely playing an English king.
Yes, yeah.
So
that's Richard the Lionheart.
So that suggests that people actually quite liked him, but obviously not enough to.
Oh, and he founds this great castle, Chateau Gaillard, which kind of provides, it's the cutting edge of castle technology. And then he's besieging a rather useless castle where he gets shot by a boy.
That's right.
Parents.
He dies in such a banal way.
Yeah, he just gets shot through, and that Richard's last dying words is that he forgives the boy when it's brought before him.
Which
is very touching.
Yeah.
But you know what then happens?
The boy is hung, drawn, and quartered.
He's flayed alive.
Oh. Isn't there a quick question before we move on? Isn't there a question about Richard's sexuality?
Yes. So some historians argue that he was gay. Others say that this is anachronistic. I mean,
how can they possibly know? I mean, what are they basing this on? I suppose the fact that he didn't have a child with Berengaria, right? But I mean, that's
he did. He certainly fathered certainly, I think, one child.
Right. Okay. So he didn't win anyway, so that's enough of him. Now let's talk about our next king, or was he a king? Certainly offered the crown, certainly filled the boots of a king. He is, of course, Oliver Cromwell, who was my tip for the top, but the public sadly didn't agree. We did a podcast about him with Paul Lay.
So we did a podcast on his term as Lord Protector.
Yes.
And of course, the reason that we said this in the preview, but the reason that we wanted Cromwell in and felt that he deserved to be in wasn't just to generate clicks. It was because he filled a king-shaped gap in the constitution that had been left by the execution of Charles I. But yes, so we have actually covered the Protectorate in another episode. So if you want to know more about that, we did that with Paul Lay, author of a fabulous book on Cromwell's Protectorate. Do suggest that. So I think that we're going to look. I mean, we're going to come back to Cromwell, aren't we? We're doing an episode on the trial and execution of Charles I.
We are. I will simply
January.
say, I think Cromwell was very hard done by in this tournament. I think he was an extremely effective ruler of England. He was feared abroad. He left the country on a sound footing. I just think he was a fine fellow. I like Oliver Cromwell a lot. I know that some listeners absolutely find that absolutely despicable, but
he. Obviously, there are large numbers of people who feel very, very passionately about him, of whom people in Ireland are obviously absolutely at the top of that list, but also royalists and Capel Loft, for instance, very cross about Cromwell's presence.
I would rather have a plain russeted captain that knows what he fights for and loves what he knows than that which you call a gentleman and is nothing else.
I beseech you in the bowels of Christ, think it possible. You may be mistaken.
See, I think I could have. I know I played Beckett, but I think Cromwell is the part I was born to play. I would love to go around, with ordering major generals to stamp out fun. I mean, that's been my thing.
Well, there's a vision.
So anyway, he lost, didn't he? Who did he lose to?
He lost to Charles II.
Charles II, of course, in that derby.
Kind of, classic.
I mean, he was never going to. It was closer than I thought, actually, because Charles II, who was, of course, wrong but romantic again. He was always going to prevail.
So Charles II. I would have thought. I would have thought that he was the seed who was likeliest to drop out. But I thought that Cromwell might beat him.
Did you?
Because I think Cromwell is such a titanic figure. I mean, much more of a titanic figure than Charles II. But obviously,
Cromwell, for my money, is the single most interesting person in English history. Which is,
I think that's entirely true. No, I think that's entirely true. The most complex, the most controversial. Therefore, I think the most interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make him the most admirable, but I think it makes him the most
We should
interesting.
mention, actually, Ronald Hutton's absolutely. I mean, some listeners will know that Ronald Hutton came on to talk about the history of paganism, but his most recent book is called The Making of Oliver Cromwell. It's an absolutely fantastic.
Yes, the first of a 3-part biography of him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
really
just
fabulous.
locating him in the landscape and in the kind of the imaginative world of the 17th century, just absolutely brilliant.
But Cromwell, you'd have thought, I had thought that if a seed was going to drop out, it was going to be Charles II. But interestingly, the seed that dropped out was Victoria. And she was up against Athelstan, who ultimately, of course, won. Victoria, were you surprised Victoria lost? So Victoria was the number 5
No,
seed.
I suppose I wasn't. Well, I mean, was that, you said beforehand that you thought that series that's on TV with Jenna Coleman playing the young Victoria, which is very kind of romantic, giddy figure, would endear her to the public. But I think Victoria suffers from 2 things. One is the sort of, she never has escaped the sort of post-death of Prince Albert.
Yeah, the widow of Windsor.
The widow, exactly. The sort of, we are not amused, humorless, that sort of image of her, which is, of course, a bit of a caricature, but has become absolutely, it's embedded in our national imagination. And I think the other thing is the one thing that people would once always have held up and said, hurrah, hurrah for Victoria. Britain was at its zenith, the empire. She was Empress of India. She's a figurehead of greatness. That's now, a lot of people don't sign up to that anymore. So in other words, she's lost a bit of her natural constituency.
Yes, I think that's true. I think that's true. And also, of course, I mean, and this is something we'll probably talk about in tomorrow's episode, is that all the kings and Lord Protectors that we've discussed so far were very powerful agents in their own right.
Yeah.
We also have George V and Elizabeth II, who were constitutional monarchs. Victoria is the kind of intersection point because she effectively, the power of the monarchy is ebbing away, but
Yes.
she's still,
She still tries, doesn't she? So there's a very famous moment in 1839 when Lord Melbourne, who was her first prime minister, who she adored, he resigned, and his replacement, I think, was going to be Peel, and he wants to change the ladies of the bedchamber, who always change when the ministry changes, but she won't have it. So Melbourne comes back in, and then soldiers on for another 2 years till 1841, and that's one of the last moments when a monarch genuinely changes, the course of kind of political history. But it doesn't, that's a last gasp against the tide. Yeah, exactly. And I think certainly she hated Gladstone, another friend of the show.
Loved Disraeli.
But, Gladstone keeps winning elections, so there's nothing she can do about it. And she has to put up with him, and she complains, he speaks to me as though I'm a public meeting, and they have this terrible frosty relationship. But she is powerless, certainly by the end of her reign.
Yeah.
She's almost completely powerless.
So, but I think it scrambles the measures by which you're judging her.
Yes.
So, Henry II or whoever, Cromwell even, these are actors and you're judging them by what they achieved in their own right. Elizabeth II, I mean, she does well because she's a kind of model of what a constitutional monarch should be. But Victoria, more ambivalent, I think.
Well, she survived a lot of attempts to assassinate her. She survived a great upsurge of Republican feeling in the sort of middle to later part of her reign. The one thing she did do, though, Tom, was to almost in some ways invent the modern monarchy. She invents the idea of the idea.
Well, she
of
marries
the sort of,
Albert, doesn't she?
Yeah.
And both of them have come from very unhappy, kind of broken backgrounds, and they create this model of domesticity.
Exactly.
That becomes hugely. She becomes a middle class queen.
As historians have said, it's the blend of the domestic and the spectacular, of the ordinary and the extraordinary, that becomes the sort of, as it were, the magic, the formula, I guess, of the British monarchy. And she creates that formula, and is actually, when you look back, despite the fact that she was often controversial and indeed unpopular, she's very successful at a time when other monarchies are crumbling at putting that at the centre of British kind of political culture.
And I think that, I think she's a complex character, isn't she? She's full of contradictions.
Yeah. She is. She's very passionate.
Very passionate.
She's not, this idea of her as a sort of humorless, withdrawn figure. I mean, obviously when she's grieving after Prince Albert, you can understand that. But for a lot of the time, she's actually a very impulsive character.
Well, there are a lot of jokes made about that, aren't there? So she's very, very keen on Lord Melbourne. And so people barrack her and shout out Lady Melbourne at her
that's right.
when they're cross with her. And then there's all the stuff about after Albert's died and she's kind of grieving with John Brown.
And then later on, there's an Indian servant called the Munchie.
Yes.
So she has a series of crushes on people. I think it's probably fair to say.
I think she's obviously such an important figure, such a fascinating figure that we should do. We should do an entire episode on. It's ridiculous to try and sum her up in
now. Talking
in 5 minutes.
Of fascinating figures.
Yes. So the final match,
one of my absolute favorite historical figures.
So the final match featured Henry VIII, a man of gargantuan appetites who killed his wives. Basically did whatever he wanted to. Probably the most famous, not just English king, but most famous king who's ever lived. And who was he up against, Dominic?
He was up against another Titanic figure in George V. I love George V, but it is fair to say that George V is possibly one of the most boring men who's ever walked the earth. George V was the second son. His older brother was called Albert Victor. He was the second son of Edward VII. So he's Victoria's grandson. He becomes king in 1910 because his brother had died a little bit earlier, leaving him as the heir. He has a tattoo of a dragon. He's a very naval character, so he's got a tattoo.
And there was a wonderful tweet from Andrew Harrison, who listened to a podcast on George V, which failed to mention the key issues of trouser creases and the Kaiser's deck shoes. Sadly lacking in top punditry. We'll stick to the rest of his history quite right, too.
Yeah, so he creases his trousers in the naval fashion, doesn't he?
Yes.
At the sides, rather than...
which you've mentioned several times.
Yes, and he does wear the right deck shoes, unlike
his cousin...
The Kaiser.
Kaiser.
So he also looks identical to the Tsar of Russia. So there are all these sort of pictures of him and the Tsar smiling happily together. Little do they know what is coming. And
notoriously, when the Russian Revolution happens and there's talk about giving sanctuary to the Tsar and the Tsarina, he says no because... this might rock the foundations of the British monarchy.
Yeah, because Lord Stamfordham and some of his advisors say it will stir up republicanism and sort of socialist agitation in Britain if you invite your relatives over. So he doesn't, and he feels guilty about that. Tom Hollander played him on TV in a brilliant thing called, I think, The Lost Prince by Stephen Polyakov. And it's an amazingly moving scene when he finds out that his relatives have all been murdered, which has always led me to think well of George V. Now, Harold Nicholson said of him, for 17 years before his accession, he did nothing at all but kill animals and stick in stamps.
Is that fair?
That is fair, actually. I was reading a thing this morning about how he killed 1,000 pheasants in a day, and afterwards wrote in his diary or something, I feel we may have gone a little bit too far. So he was a great fan of hunting, country sports, countryman. A great philatelist. So the world's greatest philatelist, some people might say, world's greatest stamp collector.
Wasn't there was some courtier who said, I've just read in the paper that some damn fool has paid £4,000 for some damn fool's stamp.
Yeah,
and George said, well, the damn fool is me.
Yes, that's absolutely right. Yeah, and he was a real stickler for the formalities. So people, if they wore the wrong shoes at court, you would have been in terrible trouble. Because if you wore the wrong shoes,
and the Kaiser,
you weren't.
So hence the First World War.
Yeah, you weren't invited.
Deck shoe carnage.
But the great thing about George V, actually, he's again in an incredibly unstable period. He is a beacon. He is a bulwark of stability.
So this is why you and Tracy Borman, between you, both nominated. I didn't.
Yeah.
I thought it's ridiculous.
This is a point at which the monarchy could easily have been blown away. But also, Tom, he does a couple of things that are very important. He urges conciliation and moderation during the Irish War of Independence in the early 1920s. So he is horrified by the fighting in Ireland.
And that's why he stops Lloyd George from calling a battle, or no, Churchill perhaps, a battleship, the Oliver Cromwell.
Exactly, all these kind of things. So there's that. There is, during the general strike, again, he urges moderation. So he says I don't know if this is apocryphal, but he is said to have said to some Tory ministers or something about the striking miners and so on, try living on their wages before you judge them. Yeah. So if he did say, that's very good for him. In 1931, he creates, as the Great Depression is hitting, he basically creates a national government of Ramsay MacDonald, the Labour leader.
He gets on well with Labour, doesn't he?
He does an exceedingly well with Labour. So when the first Labour government comes in,
that's always been the case. Labour leaders always seem to get on well with monarchs.
Yeah, it's pretty true, actually. So he gets on exceedingly well with the first Labour government. They have a guy called, what's his name? Jimmy. I can't remember what his name. I can't remember. Anyway, he's a former railwayman, and he gets on absolutely tremendously with George V, and they tell dirty jokes to each other and have an absolute whale of a time. So he's very good at bringing Labour into the sort of political mainstream, if you like. Edward VIII, who was his son. So he had a dreadful son. obviously,
Who'd
absolutely
be a lead contender for the worst king.
worst king, Edward VIII, that
in
feckless
Nazi.
Yes. Well, I mean, yeah, I'm not going to make the inevitable analogy with a current member of the royal family. But anyway, Edward VIII was that man. So he'd currently be in California. And he said of his father, God, his beliefs were God, the invincibility of the Royal Navy, and the essential rightness of whatever was British. I mean, you'd think that would be enough to get into the later rounds of the competition, wouldn't you, Tom?
What's gone wrong? What's gone wrong? Oh, and also he changed the family name to Windsor, didn't he?
He did, of course. He did,
prompting the Kaiser's famous joke.
And of course, he dies. So there
Can
are.
I just say the Kaiser's famous joke?
Go on then. Oh yeah, go on. Say, I know what you're going to say.
He was off to see the merry wives of Saxe-Coburg.
Very good. Very
hilarious.
Good. Basically, the Kaiser's only joke, I think, isn't it?
Yes, probably.
So he dies in. He
spent time recuperating in Bognor, hadn't he?
Yeah. Well, before that,
hence Bognor Regis.
Bognor Regis. So before that, in 1935, he had a tremendous jubilee, very successful, and he said, "I can't understand it. After all, I'm only a very ordinary sort of fellow." Which I think is that's a nice thing to say.
That's so Sandbrook. He'd done the first royal broadcast as well, didn't he?
So. See, that's what I say about the success of The Rest is History.
So he changed the name to Windsor. He established the royal broadcast. He established the idea of being boring is a good thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So as he established the template for the 20th
and then he dies in
monarchy.
1936, or he's dying, and his doctor famously administers a fatal dose, basically, to kill him off.
And to get him in the Times, right?
So that it will be reported in the Times deadline, rather than the more down-market evening papers. And so there are three different accounts of what he said. One is
account, Bognor.
One is that somebody said to him, "You'll be right as rain soon. You can go back to Bognor Regis." And he said, "Bugger Bognor." The official thing that he was meant to have said was, "How is the Empire?" Somebody said, "It's great." And he said he smiled and died.
Yeah.
But apparently one of the doctors wrote in his diary that actually the last thing he said was a nurse gave him a sedative or something. And he just said, "God damn you."
That sounds more probable.
It definitely sounds more probable. Yes. So he bowed out, I think, very unfairly.
Against Henry VIII. I mean,
I wanted Henry VIII.
He was never going to beat Henry VIII.
Yeah, of course. So they were the first fallers. Now Tom Holland has to go off right now.
To talk to the nation about
to address the nation about Athelstan, the winner, on the BBC. So we will bring this podcast to a close.
But coming up,
yes,
we've got the quarterfinals. So we've got Elizabeth II against Henry V. We've got William I against Henry VIII. We've got Elizabeth I against Charles II. We've got Athelstan against Edward III. So we've got lots and lots more to talk about,
and we'll talk about the changing nature of kingship as well. Yeah. That's very exciting.
Yeah.
So we'll be doing all that tomorrow. Stay tuned. And we will see you then. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to The Rest is History. For bonus episodes, early access, ad-free listening, and access to our chat community, please sign up at restishistorypod.com. That's restishistorypod.com.